Hey tonight, a warm welcome to you. Tonight we're going to journey back to a time of stark contrasts, to medieval England, and we're not just going to observe, we're going to step directly into the worn leather shoes of someone whose day goes terribly, terribly wrong. You see, we're going to find out why you wouldn't last a single day as an accused criminal in that unforgiving world. It's a period of history that often seems romantic from a distance, full of knights and castles. But for ordinary people, especially those on the wrong side of the law or even perceived to be so, life could be incredibly harsh and justice swift and severe. We'll explore just how precarious that existence could be and what it truly felt like to face such dire circumstances. And as we prepare for this rather unique journey, if you enjoy these explorations into the past and find a little calm or understanding here, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider leaving a like or perhaps subscribing to the channel. And as always, I truly love to hear where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. So please do feel free to drop a comment below. It's wonderful to see our community sharing these quiet 3 hours, these little escapes into history, together from all corners of the globe. All right, with that said, let's begin to settle in. Now find that perfect spot, whether you're nestled in bed or resting in your favorite chair. Allow your body to grow heavy, to sink softly into the surface beneath you. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel any tension from your day just melt away. Let your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench. Another gentle breath, in and out. Let the sounds around you fade into the background, becoming distant and unimportant as we prepare to travel, not just through space, but through time itself. Let your mind become open, receptive on, and ready to receive this story, ready to step into another life. Just for a little while, and now you are there. Congratulations, or perhaps cause condolences. You've just woken up. Not in your familiar bed with its soft sheets and comforting weight, but on rough, damp earth. The smell of stale ale, unwashed bodies, and pungent wood smoke is thick in your nostrils, clinging to the back of your throat. A throbbing pain pulses behind your eyes, a dull, insistent drumbeat as you try to sit up. A coarse woolen blanket, surprisingly heavy and alive with its own tiny, irritating movements, slips from your shoulders, exposing your skin to the chill air. You blink, trying to focus your swimming vision. Muted gray, light, weak and cheerless, and filters through a grimy, unhorn-paned window of what seems to be a tiny wattle and daub hovel. The walls are uneven, daubed with mud, and what looks like straw. Your head spins with a disorienting lurch. Where are you? And more urgently, much more urgently, what was that terrible crashing sound you vaguely remember from before? A sense of dread, cold and sharp as a shard of ice pierces through your confusion. You have a fleeting, nightmarish memory of shouting, of running, of something valuable, now broken or gone. The chill on your skin isn't just from the morning air. You realize with a jolt that this isn't just a bad dream, a lingering fragment of some troubled sleep. This is real. This is medieval England. And from the knot of fear tightening in your gut, a cold, hard certainty. You understand that you are in serious trouble. That vague, unsettling memory starts to sharpen. A merchant stall, an argument escalating with frightening speed, a desperate grab. Oh no, what have you done? The sounds outside. A dog barking aggressively. A sudden, distant shout. Suddenly seem much closer, much more personal, each one a potential threat. This day, your first unwilling day in this ancient world, is dawning. And it promises to be short and brutal unless you can somehow navigate its myriad unseen dangers. Your journey as a fugitive has already begun. The first light of dawn is also the dawn of your greatest fear. In the dim, dusty light of the hovel, you huddle, trying to make sense of the chaos in your mind. How did this happen? How did you end up here, a fugitive in this alien time? Your thoughts are a confusing blur, a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. But slowly, painfully, you begin to piece together the events of, was it only yesterday or moments ago? Time itself feels fractured but unreliable. You try to focus, to rewind. It starts as a sensation, a gnawing emptiness in your stomach, a desperate, aching hunger that has been your constant companion for days. It seems, in this bewildering new existence. You remember wandering through a bustling marketplace, the air thick with the smells of roasting meat, fresh bread, ripe fruit, smells that were both tantalizing and torturous. The sounds were a cacophony, merchants hawking their wares in loud, booming voices, animals bleating and squawking, the chatter and laughter of people who seemed so at ease, so much a part of this world you had fallen into. Perhaps you saw a loaf of bread, cooling on a wooden stall, its crust a beautiful golden brown. In your modern understanding, a desperate snatch, a plea for mercy, later, might result in a stern warning. Perhaps some small act of compelled charity. But here things are different, or maybe it wasn't hunger but a misunderstanding. You recall a crowded, narrow lane, the rough cobbles slick beneath your unfamiliar worn shoes. Perhaps someone jostled you or you them. Words were exchanged. Harsh, guttural sounds. You barely understood, but whose aggression was unmistakable. Fear, sharp and metallic, pricked at you. Did you push back? Did you raise your voice in a way that in your own time might be seen as assertive? But here in this rigid social order was perceived as an outrageous challenge to someone of higher standing? You remember a sudden escalation, shouts, arms flailing. Perhaps someone fell, cried out in pain. It happened so fast, a confusing, terrifying swirl of motion and noise. There was no intent to cause serious harm, only a panicked reaction, a desperate attempt to extract yourself from a situation spiraling out of your control. Or could it be simpler and more insidious? Perhaps you were found with something, a small trinket, a piece of cloth, a tool that wasn't yours. Something you might have picked up, thinking it discarded or accepted from someone with a friendly smile, never imagining its provenance could be questioned, could be a death sentence. You try to explain, but the words catch in your throat, the faces around you. Moments before, indifferent or curious, now harden into suspicion, then outright hostility. Whatever the specifics, the outcome is the same. That sickening lurch in your stomach as you realized with a clarity that cut through the panic that you had crossed a line, not a line. You understood, not a boundary you would have recognized, but a line that, in this medieval world, was absolute. There was no explaining, no appealing to reason or shared humanity as you knew it. There was only the sudden stark awareness of your transgression, of being utterly, terrifyingly in the wrong. According to rules, you were only just beginning to comprehend. The confusion, the swiftness of it all, leaves you breathless even now, replaying those critical moments. A feeling of profound injustice washes over you, or perhaps just the crushing weight of overwhelming and inexplicable bad luck. You didn't mean for this to happen, but it did. The memory solidifies cold and hard in your mind. There's no denying it. And even as you accept this terrible truth, the world outside your flimsy shelter begins to stir with a purpose that chills you to the bone. Still, huddled in the semi-darkness of the hovel, every nerve ending raw, you strain your ears. The usual morning sounds of a waking village, a distant cock crowing, the lowing of cattle, the murmur of voices easing into the day. These are absent, or perhaps, you realize with a fresh wave of nausea, they are drowned out by something else, something more ominous. At first, it's just a subtle shift in the auditory landscape, a change in timbre that your heightened senses pick up on. Then, you begin to distinguish individual sounds, raised voices, not the easygoing chat of neighbors, but something sharper, more urgent. You can't make out the words clearly. Not at first, but the tone is enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Then, a word cuts through the general hubbub, repeated like a drumbeat. Thief, it sounds. Guam, or perhaps scoundrel, or vagrant. Whatever term they might use, for someone like you, someone who has disrupted their order. Your heart begins to pound against your ribs, a frantic, trapped thing. Is it you they speak of? It must be. Who else could it be? You press yourself further into the shadows, as if the damp earth could swallow you whole, protect you. The sounds seem to be getting closer. You can hear the heavy thud of footsteps, more than one set, moving with a purpose that feels directly aimed at your precarious hiding place. A rough description. Is that what you hear? A garbled account of your appearance and your clothes? The direction you were last seen heading? Panic, cold and sharp, claws at your throat. The fragile hope you might have nurtured, a desperate, unreasoning belief that you could somehow just disappear, that your transgression might go unnoticed, or be quickly forgotten in the press of daily life, now evaporates. Like mist in a harsh wind. Anonymity, your only flimsy shield, is vanishing with every passing second, with every shout that echoes through the morning air. What do you do? The question screams in your mind. Do you stay hidden, so pressed into this filthy corner is praying they will pass by, that this is all some terrible misunderstanding, a hunt for someone else? Or do you attempt to flee? But where would you go? You are a stranger. In this hostile land with no knowledge of the terrain, no allies, no refuge, every instinct intoned by a lifetime in a world where confrontation often means a different kind of danger, screams at you to remain still, to make yourself small and visible. Yet, a primal urge to run, to escape, the closing net, is almost overwhelming. The internal debate is a silent, agonizing torture, each option fraught with unimaginable peril. But the choice, you sense, is rapidly being taken away from you. The scraping sound of something heavy being dragged nearby. A sudden, sharp command barked out. They are very close now. The voices are just outside now. There's a hammering on the thin wooden door, a violent, impatient sound that makes you jump with every blow. There's no more time to think. The flimsy door of the hovel shudders under a heavy impact, then bursts inward with a splintering crack, revealing a sliver of gray morning light and the menacing silhouettes of several figures, or perhaps in a last desperate surge of adrenaline. You don't wait for them. You bolt from your hiding place like a startled deer, bursting out into the dawning day, your only thought to put as much distance as possible between yourself and the immediate threat. Either way, you are exposed and the hunt is on. This is the terrifying reality of the hue and cry. It's a phrase you might have read in old books, a quaint historical term. But now, you are living it, and there is nothing quaint about it. The entire community, it seems, is mobilized against you. These are not trained guards in uniform, no organized constabulary. These are ordinary villagers, men with work-hardened hands, gripping farming implements or stout sticks, women with fierce expressions, even children. Their high-pitched shouts, adding to the din, pointing with unerring accuracy in your direction. It's a civic duty. You dimly understand a deeply ingrained responsibility in this era for everyone to join, The pursuit of an offender, to raise the alarm, to chase, to capture. Stop, thief. The shout erupts from a dozen throats and echoing around. The small collection of wattle and daub houses. There he goes. After him. You stumble over the uneven ground, your breath already searing your lungs. Your legs leaden with terror and exertion. Every face you glimpse is turned towards you, a sea of hostile eyes. Some expressions are filled with righteous anger, others with a kind of grim excitement, the thrill of the chase. There is no pity here, no hesitation. You are the clear target and the outsider, the one who has broken their peace. Your desperate flight takes you through the heart of the village, a chaotic scramble past bemused livestock, under startled washing lines, around the corner of a small stone church. The sounds are overwhelming. The cacophony of shouts, the baying of dogs that have joined the pursuit, the thud of running feet on the hard-packed earth. Your own ragged gasps for air. You risk a glance behind. They are closer. Then you think, a relentless, sprawling wave of humanity. There seems to be nowhere to hide. No alleyway, unobserved. No doorway that might offer a moment's sanctuary. Every shadow seems to hold a new pursuer. The sheer number of people, their collective determination, is a crushing force. You are one, they are many, and they know this land. Every twist and turn, every hiding spot. You are running on pure, unthinking panic, so fueled by the primal fear of the hunted. This isn't just a pursuit, it's an organism. The village itself, expelling a foreign body. And you are that foreign body, gasping for breath, heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. You see a dark line of trees ahead, at the edge of the tilled fields. Your only hope is to reach the cover of the woods, but they seem so terribly, impossibly far away, somehow through sheer luck, or a desperate, unexpected turn. You manage to break free from the immediate clutch of your pursuers. The shouts begin to recede, just slightly, as you plunge into the relative cover of the woods, or perhaps find yourself scrambling through overgrown fields at the village edge, the dark, brooding expanse of a moor stretching before you. But this landscape, you quickly discover, is no gentle, welcoming refuge. It is an adversary in its own right. The medieval countryside is wilder, less tamed than anything you have ever experienced. If you've entered a forest, the trees press close together, their ancient branches tangled overhead, casting the ground into a deep, perpetual twilight. Thorny brambles fawn thick as your thumb, tear at your already ragged clothes and scratch your exposed skin, leaving angry red wheals that sting and burn. The forest floor is a treacherous carpet of gnarled roots hidden, dips and slick patches of mud, causing you to stumble, to twist your ankle, to expend precious energy, just staying upright. There are no neat signposted footpaths here, no reassuring markers to guide you towards safety. Every direction looks the same, an impenetrable wall of green and brown. If it's open moorland, you've reached. The terrain is deceptively challenging. What appears from a distance to be flat ground is often tussocky and uneven and pocked with hidden boggy patches that can suck at your feet, pulling you down. The wind whips across these open spaces, carrying a biting chill that seeps into your bones even through your fear-induced sweat. There is nowhere to hide. You feel utterly exposed under the vast, indifferent sky. The sounds of direct pursuit may have faded to a distant murmur, or perhaps disappeared altogether for now. But the fear of being seen, of a lone figure spotting you from a nearby rise, or of blundering into another small settlement, another hostile community, is a constant gnawing anxiety. Exhaustion begins to set in, a deep, aching weariness in your limbs. Your lungs burn with every ragged breath. Your mouth is dry and a desperate thirst begins to assert itself. How long can you keep this up? Where are you even going? The questions circle endlessly in your mind, offering comfort, only a deeper sense of hopelessness. Your breath mists before you in the chill air, a visible sign of your desperate exertion, a plume that could betray you to any watchful eye. This unforgiving landscape offers no solace, only more hardship, more obstacles in your desperate bid for an escape that feels increasingly impossible. Every rustle of leaves in the undergrowth, every snap of a twig underfoot, or worse nearby, why sends a fresh jolt of pure, unadulterated fear through you. How long can you keep this up? The day is still young, but your strength, your resolve is already waning. You find it a temporary, almost laughably precarious hiding spot. Perhaps it's a dense thicket of holly and thorn, so unwelcoming that you hope your pursuers might pass it by. Or maybe a shallow hollow, overgrown with bracken, where you can lie flat against the damp earth in heart still pounding, ears straining for any sound of approach. The immediate sounds of the chase, the shouts, and the running. Vidoshua have long indeed faded. For now there is a silence war, but it's not a peaceful silence. It's a taut, watchful quiet, heavy with unspoken threat. In this brief, terrifying respite, as your breathing slowly begins to steady and the initial adrenaline surge subsides, the full crushing weight of your situation finally begins to sink in with horrifying clarity. You are not just running from a momentary danger, from an angry crowd. You are an outlaw. The word itself, when it forms in your mind, has a chilling resonance. You are outside the law, beyond its protection. However scant that protection might have been for someone like you in the first place. You remember fragmented stories, perhaps from those same old books, of what it meant to be declared an outlaw in these times. It meant you were a wolf's head, caput lupinum. It meant that any man could strike you down, could kill you on sight, without penalty, perhaps even for a reward. Your life, from the moment of your crime and flight, has no more value than that of a wild animal. There, no trial, no appeal, no mercy for the declared outlaw caught in the open. The thought is so monstrous, so alien to your modern sensibilities of justice and human rights, that it's difficult to fully grasp. Yet, the grim certainty of it settles upon you like a physical weight. The loneliness is profound, an aching void. Back in your own time, even in moments of trouble, there were always structures, systems, people you could theoretically turn to. Here, you are utterly alone. There is no one to vouch for, no one to plead your case, no one to offer a hand of friendship or even a moment of pity. Every person you might encounter is a potential enemy, a potential bringer of your doom. The silence of the woods or the vast emptiness of the moor presses in on you, mirroring the desolation in your soul. There is no sanctuary for you here. The brief rest does little to soothe your aching body or your terrified mind. The gnawing hunger you ignored in your panic now makes itself known with a vengeance. Another enemy to contend with in this desperate flight. And you know, Sakte, with a certainty that chills you more than the damp earth beneath you, that this pause, this illusion of safety, cannot last. Despite your best efforts to remain concealed, to melt into the landscape, you are discovered. Perhaps it's the sharp eyes of a woodsman, his livelihood dependent on knowing every secret of these woods, who stumbles upon your hiding place, or a traveling merchant with his small armed retinue for protection, cutting through a less used track. Or you what most likely, it's a determined group of villagers fanning out from the initial hue and cry, systematically searching every copse, every ditch, their knowledge of the local area far superior to yours. The moment of discovery is sickeningly abrupt. One moment you are straining your ears in the tense quiet, the next a sudden shadow falls over you, or a gruff voice barks out a command, "There he is," or perhaps it's a pointing finger, a triumphant shout that shatters the fragile silence. The brief, desperate hope you might have clung to that tiny ember of a chance, that you might somehow evade them until nightfall, is instantly, brutally extinguished. Adrenaline surges, through you again, a useless flood, for there is nowhere left to run. You scramble to your feet or try to, your limbs, stiff and unresponsive, from your cramped hiding place and the pervading cold. You are surrounded. Faces peer down at you. Some are flushed with the exertion of the search, some are grimly satisfied, others merely stolid and dutiful. There is no escape. Your options are stark and horrifyingly limited. You could try to fight a futile, desperate struggle against greater numbers that would only seal your fate more bloodily and perhaps earn you an even harsher punishment. You could attempt another mad dash for freedom, but you know is with a sinking feeling of despair that your exhausted body would not carry you far. Or now you can surrender. The fight, what little there was in you, more drains out of you like water from a sieve, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. Resignation settles upon your shoulders, a crushing weight. You see the hard resolve in their eyes, the absence of any pity or doubt. To them, you are simply the fugitive, the criminal, or brought to bay. There will be no gentle questioning here, no consideration of your side of the story. You are a problem that has been caught and will now be dealt with. According to the harsh customs of their time, the brief, desperate flight is over. Rough hands seize you, pulling you to your feet, your arms twisted painfully behind your back, perhaps bound with a piece of rough rope they carry for just such a purpose. Now, you face the terrifying prospect of what passes for justice in this unforgiving age. The journey back towards the village, this time as a captive, is a walk of profound shame and terror. The journey back is a torment, a slow, forced march under the watchful eyes of your captors. Your arms are bound tightly, the rough rope chafing your skin with every jolting step. Each footfall on the familiar, yet now dreadfully alien, path back towards the village, or perhaps towards the more imposing structure of a local lord's hall, feels heavy, as if your feet are weighted with lead. There is no quiet dignity in this return, no discreet handling of an unfortunate situation. Instead, you are a spectacle, a trophy of their pursuit, and your capture is an event for all to witness, as you are led or perhaps dragged. Along the news of your apprehension seems to spread like wildfire. People emerge from their low-roofed dwellings, from the fields where they toil, their faces turning towards you. At first, it's just stares, a gauntlet of eyes, curious, cold, appraising. You can feel them on your skin. 100 pinpricks of unwelcome attention. You try to lower your gaze, to focus on the muddy track beneath your feet, but it's impossible to ignore the collective scrutiny. Then the sounds begin. Murmurs ripple through the gathering crowd and quickly escalating into outright jeers and taunts. Words you don't fully understand, yet their venomous intent is perfectly clear. Wash over you like a tide of filth. You see the faces of those who pursued you earlier in the hue and cry. Their expressions are a mixture of grim satisfaction, their civic duty fulfilled, and a lingering anger at the disruption you caused. Some point with unconcealed contempt. A child, and emboldened by the adults, mimics a gesture of hanging. A clod of earth, perhaps, or a piece of rotting vegetable thrown by an unseen hand from the edge of the crowd, strikes your shoulder, the impact, a dull thud, the insult, a fresh wave of humiliation. You flinch, but you. Captors merely pull you along more roughly, indifferent to this casual cruelty. A burning shame creeps up your neck, flushing your face. You want to shrink to become invisible, to disappear into the very earth you walk upon. But there is no escape from this public degradation. Your dignity, already tattered by the fear and the chase it feels as if it is, being systematically stripped away with every step, with every hostile gaze, with every scornful laugh that reaches your ears. Even those who remain silent, who merely watch with impassive faces, offer no comfort. Their silence is not one of solidarity, but of distance, of otherness. They are part of the community that has judged you and found you wanting. You are the outsider, the transgressor, and this is your penance. Even before any formal judgment is passed, the air itself feels thick with condemnation. Your shoulders sag under the invisible weight of it all. There is no kindness in their eyes, only the hard certainty of your guilt. You are brought before the reeve or perhaps a steward, his face stern and unyielding. Your ordeal is far from over. It is merely entering a newer, more terrifying phase. The stern-faced reeve, or perhaps it is a steward of the local manor, gives a curt nod, and you are unceremoniously shoved towards another. Door on this one, low and narrow, set into what seems to be the side of a more substantial building, or perhaps leading down into the earth itself. A rough hand on your back propels you forward, and then you are thrust to darkness, stumbling onto an uneven floor. The door slams shut behind you with a sound of dreadful finality, a heavy wooden thud, followed by the grating scrape of a bolt being shot home. For a few moments, you stand there, disoriented, blinking into the oppressive blackness. As your eyes, slowly, painfully, begin to adjust, shapes emerge from the gloom. You are in a small, confined space. Perhaps it's a cellar, the air thick with the smell of damp earth, and something else, a rank, sour odor that speaks of previous unfortunate occupants, of unwashed bodies and human waste. Or maybe it's a secure room within the manor, a windowless stone chamber that feels colder than the air outside. It could even be a crude village cage, hastily constructed from rough-hewn timbers, exposed to the elements on one side, offering little protection from the wind or prying eyes. Whatever its precise form, your makeshift jail is a place of profound discomfort. If you are lucky, there might be a scattering of damp and musty straw in one corner, offering the barest pretense of a bed. More likely, the floor is cold, hard-packed earth, or uneven stone flags that send a chilling dampness seeping into your bones through your thin, worn clothing. You run your hands tentatively along the walls. They are rough to the touch, splintered wood, or cold, unyielding stone, slick with moisture. There is no comfort here, no solace. The lack of sanitation is absolute. A foul corner seems to serve as a latrine, the stench from it adding to the general misery of the place. You explore the tiny space, a few paces in one direction, a few in the other. It feels like a cage and you a trapped animal. The gnawing emptiness in your stomach, a dull ache you had almost forgotten during the terror of the chase and the shame of your return, now reasserts itself with a vengeance. Thirst, too, scratches at your throat. But there is no water, no food offered. The minutes stretch into an eternity. Then, slowly, agonizingly, they begin to form hours. Time loses its familiar structure, becoming a vast, undifferentiated ocean of misery and apprehension. The darkness is almost total, broken only by the faintest sliver of light. Perhaps under the ill-fitting door or through a tiny crack in the wall. It's a darkness that presses in on you, amplifying every tiny sound, every fear. You hear the scuttling of unseen creatures and rats, perhaps, or insects, their tiny movements, a constant, unnerving reminder of the filth that surrounds you. Your thoughts race, a frantic, looping reel of what? Julian, how could this happen? What will they do to you next? Will anyone listen? Is there any hope at all? The aching cold becomes a constant companion, making your teeth chatter. Your limbs tremble. Occasionally, sounds from the world outside filter in. A distant shout, the laughter of children, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Each sound is a poignant reminder of the life you've lost, the ordinary world that continues on without you, indifferent to your plight. You might hear the heavy tread of your jailer passing. By the door, a gruff cough, muttered word, but no one comes to check on you, to offer comfort, or even to acknowledge your existence beyond that of a secured prisoner. The darkness and the silence, the chilling damp, the gnawing hunger, they all conspire to break your spirit. Sleep is impossible. Every sound makes you jump. Eventually, the door creaks open, a rectangle of dim, unwelcome light appearing, and you are roughly pulled to your feet. Seems your accusers are ready for you. You are blinking in the sudden brightness, though it's merely the muted light of a torchlit room, or the gray daylight filtering through a high, narrow window. After the oppressive darkness of your confinement, you find yourself standing, or perhaps still being roughly held, in a space larger than your recent cell. It might be the main room of the Reeves dwelling, rustic and functional, with a simple wooden table and stools, the air smelling of wood smoke and damp wool. Or perhaps you have been brought to the hall of a local lord, a more imposing chamber, with rough tapestries on the stone walls and a slightly raised platform at one end where a man of clear authority sits. This is the figure before whom you are now presented, the reeve, the bailiff, or even the lord himself. His face is stern-faced, etched with the lines of someone accustomed to wielding power and making swift judgments, his eyes appraising you with a cold, dispassionate gaze, and then you see them, your accusers, standing to one side, their expressions, a mixture of anger, self-righteousness, and perhaps a certain grim satisfaction at seeing you brought so low. If it was the merchant whose goods you allegedly stole, he is there, his voice already rising in indignant complaint, detailing his losses, perhaps exaggerating their value. If it was the person with whom you brawled, they might be sporting a bruise or a cut pointing, an accusing finger at you, their words tumbling out in a torrent of grievance, painting you as the aggressor, the violent troublemaker. Or if you were found with items deemed suspicious, those who discovered you are present, their testimony likely focusing on your furtive manner, your inability to provide a satisfactory explanation, an explanation you were, perhaps too terrified or bewildered to offer coherently. They tell their version of events, and as you listen, a knot of despair tightens in your chest. Their stories are a distorted reflection of what you recall, eschewed to present you in the worst possible light. Details are twisted, your actions misconstrued, your intentions born of desperation, confusion, or simply an accident of circumstance are painted as malicious and calculated. Accusations fly like poisoned darts, each one finding its mark, making you feel smaller, more guilty, more trapped. You try to speak, to interject, to offer your own faltering account. A desperate, but, or it wasn't, like that escapes your lips. Your voice sounds weak, thin, easily lost in the tide of their confident condemnations. Perhaps the authority figure raises a hand, silencing you with an impatient gesture, or your captors give you a rough shake, a silent warning to hold your tongue until permitted to speak, if you are permitted at all. The power imbalance is stark, suffocating. Their words carry weight, the words of established community members, while yours are the desperate pleas of an outsider, a stranger, already presumed guilty by the very fact of your capture and accusation. No one listens, truly listens, to your side. You feel a surge of frustration, a burning sense. of injustice. But it is quickly followed by a chilling fear. You are being verbally overwhelmed. A picture of your guilt being meticulously painted by your accusers, and you are powerless to stop it. The weight of their collective testimony settles upon you, heavy and oppressive. Every word they utter seems to drive another nail into the coffin of your hope. Their words paint a picture of a hardened criminal, not the confused, desperate person you know yourself to be. The official listens, his expression unreadable, then turns his gaze upon you. "What say you to these charges?" he asks, but his tone suggests the answer is already decided. The official's eyes, hard and unblinking, are fixed on you. That question, "What say you to these charges?" hangs heavy in the air, but it doesn't feel like an invitation for a fair hearing. There is no comforting presence beside you, no legal counsel to advise you in how to respond, to protect your interests. The very concept of such a thing is centuries away from this stark room. Here, you are alone, facing your accusers and your judge, and the interrogation, medieval style, begins. The questions come, not gently, or with an aim, to uncover an objective truth, but with a clear design, to confirm the guilt that is already presumed. They are relentless questions, sometimes direct and brutal, sometimes winding and subtle, designed to trip you up, to lead you into a confession, or at least into a contradiction that can be construed as deceit. You might be pressured, your voice drowned out if you try to offer a narrative that deviates from the one already constructed by your accusers. Threats, veiled or overt key, might be employed, hints of harsher treatment. Should you prove uncooperative, should you fail to show the proper deference or remorse, your modern instincts, the ingrained knowledge of rights you didn't even realize you possessed until they were so glaringly absent to scream at you. You think perhaps of remaining silent, but you quickly sense that silence here is not a right, it is an admission. It is seen as sullenness, as defiance, as the quiet confirmation of a guilty heart. To ask for counsel would be met with blank incomprehension, or perhaps even suspicion. Who would counsel a common vagrant, an accused thief, a brawler? Such things are for men of standing, men with connections, not for someone like you, already marked by misfortune. So, you try to answer, your voice trembling, your mind racing to find the right words, the safe words. But with every hesitant response, you feel yourself sinking deeper into a quagmire. Your words are twisted, their meaning subtly altered by the questioner to fit the narrative of your guilt. An attempt to explain. Your fear might be interpreted as consciousness of wrongdoing. A moment of confusion, a slight hesitation, as you try to recall the blur of events, is taken as a sign that you are concocting a lie. It's like navigating a treacherous swamp in the dark. Every step you take, every word you utter seems to draw you further into peril. The psychological pressure is immense, a suffocating weight. The official's unyielding stare, the hostile glares of your accusers, the absence of any friendly face, any flicker of understanding or empathy in the room, it all combines to erode your composure, your ability to think clearly. You are trapped in a terrifying game, whose rules you do not understand. A game where the outcome seems preordained. It's a spider's web, and with every desperate attempt to extricate yourself, you only become more entangled. There is no escape from the relentless logic of their accusations, no room for your truth in their version of justice. The questions might start slowly, almost conversationally, lulling you into a false sense of being heard. Then, suddenly, they come faster, more aggressively, battering down your fragile defenses, leaving you stammering, confused again, utterly terrified. Then just as abruptly, a heavy silence might fall, the official merely watching you, letting your own fear and discomfort do his work. Exhausted and confused, you may have admitted to something or contradicted yourself. Simply broken down. The official nods slowly, a grim satisfaction on his face. The questioning is over. But what comes next is even more terrifying. The official, be he reeve, bailiff, or lord, leans back, perhaps stroking his chin, his gaze distant for a moment as he considers the evidence presented before him. This evidence, as you've witnessed with a sinking heart, consists almost entirely of the vehement testimony of your accusers, colored by their anger and prejudice. There are no fingerprints here, no forensic analysis, only words, and the weight of community opinion which you sense is already firmly against you. He might confer in a low murmur with an assistant, or perhaps simply stare into the middle distance, weighing options that are entirely opaque to you. Then he might mention a path to proving your innocence, a concept that sends a brief, desperate flicker of hope through you, only to be just as quickly extinguished. He speaks of something called compurgation, or oath-helping. You gather, through his clipped explanation or perhaps through the ensuing discussion, that this would involve you finding a certain number of reputable men, usually 12, a number heavy with significance, from the community, who would be willing to swear a sacred oath before God that they believe you to be innocent, that your own oath of denial is true. They would not be swearing that they witnessed your innocence, merely that they believe you to be a person of good character, incapable of the crime alleged. The impossibility of this for you, a stranger, an outsider with no connections, but no history in this place, and slams into you with the force of a physical blow. Who here would risk their soul, their reputation by swearing such an oath for you, someone they only know as an accused vagrant, a suspected criminal? The very idea is absurd. This path, this supposed chance to clear your name, is a door firmly barred to you. Your lack of social standing, your otherness you becomes yet another damning piece of evidence in their eyes. Then, the conversation takes an even more terrifying turn. If the evidence is deemed unclear, if your accusers are strong in their condemnation, but lack definitive proof, and if compurgation is impossible or deemed insufficient, the official might begin to speak of another way, to ascertain God's will in the matter. He might mention trial by ordeal. The words themselves send a shiver of profound dread down your spine, a primal fear of the unknown. You might not understand the specifics at first, but the hushed, solemn tone in which it is discussed, the almost religious fervor that creeps into the voices, tells you this is something ancient, something deeply serious, and something intensely physical. Perhaps someone, seeing your incomprehension, or perhaps merely to impress upon you the gravity of your situation, describes what this might entail: the ordeal of cold water. You would be bound and thrown into a sanctified pool or river. If you float, it is a sign that the holy water rejects you while proving your guilt. You sink, well, if you sink and are pulled out in time, you might be deemed innocent, the water having accepted you. Ordeal of hot iron. You would be required to carry a piece of red-hot iron, blessed by a priest, for a set number of paces. Your hand would then be bound, and after 3 days, if the wound was healing cleanly, it was a sign of God's favor, of your innocence. If it was festering, then divine judgment had found you guilty. Ordeal by boiling. Water, you would have to retrieve a stone from a cauldron of boiling. Yorisa with the similar consequences for the healing of your scalded arm. As you listen, or perhaps as you see someone begin to make quiet, ominous preparations, a fire being stoked higher than necessary for warmth, a large cauldron. Being brought forth. A cold sweat breaks out on your skin at the mere thought. This isn't justice as you understand it. This is a terrifying appeal to superstition, a reliance on divine intervention to solve earthly crimes. The deep-seated belief in these practices, the utter faith that God will reveal the truth through such brutal means, is etched on the faces around you. Your modern mind recoils in horror and disbelief, but here, in this, to me it is a solemn and accepted part of their world. Your fate might literally be decided by fire or water, by pain, and the capricious nature of healing. The official announces his decision. Perhaps there is enough proof from the accusers, or perhaps your fate will indeed be decided by an ordeal. Either way, the path ahead leads only to suffering. The brief hope for understanding or mercy you might have clung to has utterly vanished. The path ahead does not lead to a formal courtroom with bewigged judges and learned clerks, not for someone in your position accused of such a crime in this particular place and time. Instead, you find yourself thrust before the ultimate local authority, perhaps the very lord of the manor in whose lands you were apprehended. The setting might be his great hall, a cavernous space with a high-timbered Druvis rushlights casting flickering shadows on the stone walls, and a faint smell of wood smoke, old hounds, and stale ale hanging in the air. At the far end, upon a slightly raised platform, sits the Lord himself. He is a figure of unquestioned authority, here, his word quite literally law within his domain. He might be dressed in finer clothes than anyone you have yet encountered, a heavy gold ring, perhaps glinting on his finger, as he rests his hand on the arm of his carved wooden chair. Others are present, of course, in his steward, perhaps a man-at-arms or two, and your accusers, and who now stand a little straighter, their voices more confident in the presence of their master. The case against you is presented, not with lengthy legal arguments, but with a brief, stark recitation of your alleged crime and the evidence gathered. The testimony you have already heard, the circumstances of your capture. It is a swift, one-sided affair. You might not even be asked to speak again, or if you are, your words feel utterly insignificant, swallowed by the vastness of the hall and the palpable weight of the Lord's power. He looks down at you, this arbiter of your fate. His expression might be one of boredom, as if this interruption is a minor annoyance in his day, another petty squabble or transgression amongst the lower orders that requires his attention. Or perhaps it is a stern, unyielding visage. He's one that brooks, no nonsense, no excuses. There is little sign of sympathy, no flicker of interest in your personal circumstances, your fear, your desperation. You are simply a problem to be dealt with, quickly and efficiently, and to maintain the order of his lands. He might listen for a few moments, his gaze drifting, or perhaps fixed intently, on you, making you squirm under its intensity. Then, with a decisiveness that is breathtaking in its speed, he delivers his judgment. There is no lengthy deliberation, no retiring to consider the verdict. Based on the word of his people, on the evidence of your flight, on your status as an outsider, the pronouncement of guilt is made, and just as swiftly the sentence follows. It is all over in a matter of minutes. This crucial determination of your future or lack thereof. The shock of it, the sheer velocity with which your fate has been sealed, leaves you reeling, your mind struggling to catch up. There is no appeal process for someone like you, no higher court to petition for mercy. Here, in this hall or before this man, justice is absolute and it is final. You are a pawn, a speck of dust in the face of such entrenched arbitrary power, a stark example of the rigid social hierarchy that governs this world. The sentence is passed. Your day as a criminal is rapidly approaching its brutal climax. There are no more avenues for argument, no more pleas to be made. Only the grim reality of the punishment awaits. The Lord, or perhaps the Reeve, who has heard your case, clears his throat. A hush falls over the room or the assembled crowd. If your judgment has been delivered in a more public space, every eye is upon this figure of authority, and you feel a cold dread pool in your stomach, a premonition of what is to come. His voice, when it comes, is devoid of emotion, flat and decisive, as he delivers the pronouncement that will seal your fate. The words themselves might be simple, unadorned, yet they strike you with the force of a physical blow. Perhaps it is a fine, a sum of money, so vast, so far beyond your non-existent means, that it is tantamount to a sentence of perpetual servitude, or further, more brutal punishment for your inability to pay. Or maybe the sentence is to be placed in the stocks, a period of public humiliation and discomfort, exposed to the scorn and missiles of the populace. Worse still, it could be a whipping, a certain number of lashes to be laid upon your bare back, a pain you can only begin to imagine with a sickening lurch of terror. For other crimes, especially those involving theft, the words might describe a mutilation, the loss of a hand, perhaps a grim and permanent marker of your transgression, a sentence that will render you an outcast and a cripple for the rest of your days, or branding, a hot iron searing your flesh, leaving an indelible mark of shame that you will carry forever. And for the most serious offenses, or if you are deemed a persistent troublemaker, an unprotected vagrant with no value to the community, the word spoken might simply be death. You hear the words. They seem to hang in the air, each syllable echoing in the sudden, profound silence that follows. They penetrate your consciousness with a dreadful clarity, cutting through the fog of fear and exhaustion that has enveloped you. For a moment, the world seems to stop. You might feel a sudden wave of dizziness, your vision blurring at the edges, a chill deeper than any cold you have yet experienced seeps into your very marrow. Your limbs might begin to tremble uncontrollably, a physical manifestation of the terror that grips your soul. Around you, the sounds of the court, or the crowd, begin to filter back in as if from a great distance. There might be a murmur of satisfaction from your accusers, a low growl of approval from some onlookers. Others might watch with a kind of grim pity, their faces impassive but their eyes reflecting a distant understanding of your plight. Yet they offer no word of comfort, no gesture of help. They are spectators to your doom, part of the system that has condemned you. The words of your sentence and irrevocable and absolutes and reverberate in your mind, a death knell for any lingering hope you might have harbored. You are condemned. There is no time to process, no time to grieve for your lost freedom or your former life. The sentence is to be carried out swiftly. Rough hands are upon you again, dragging you towards the place of punishment. The words of your sentence, perhaps for a lesser offense, one deemed worthy of public disgrace rather than immediate bodily harm, still echo in your ears as you are hauled from the place of judgment. You are not led to a dark cell this time, but out into the open air, into the heart of the village or town square, a place bustling with daily life, a place where your shame will be most keenly observed. Here stands the instrument of your punishment, the stocks or perhaps a pillory, heavy wooden beams with holes carved for ankles and wrists, or for the neck and hands, waiting to secure you. You are forced into position, your limbs roughly manhandled into the confining openings. The wood is coarse and splintered against your skin. Then, with a heavy thud, the top beam is lowered and locked into place, clamping you fast. You are immobile, exposed, a helpless effigy of transgression, put on display for all to see. The initial discomfort is immediate, the awkward, unnatural angle of your body, the pressure of the wood cutting into your flesh. But this is only the beginning of your ordeal. Time begins to stretch, each minute an agonizing eternity. The sun, if it is daytime, it might beat down, mercilessly, on your unprotected head, or a cold wind might whip around. Do you see, chilling you to the bone? If it rains, you are soaked through. The dampness seeping into your clothes, adding to your misery. There is no shelter, no escape from the elements. Your muscles begin to cramp, aching, with a dull, persistent throb that intensifies with each passing hour. A desperate thirst develops, your throat dry and parched, but no one offers you a sip of water. Hunger, too, gnaws at your insides, a hollow emptiness that mirrors the despair in your heart. But the physical discomfort, as acute as it is perhaps secondary to the psychological torment. You are the focus of relentless public attention. Passers-by stop to stare, their faces a mixture of curiosity, contempt, and a certain grim satisfaction. Children, too young to fully understand, but old enough to sense the mood of the crowd, point and sometimes laugh, their innocent cruelty, a particularly sharp sting. The jeers and mockery are constant. People shout insults, dredge up your alleged crime, their voices dripping with scorn. Look at the thief, they might cry, or serves the scoundrel right. Sometimes the verbal abuse escalates. Refuse, a rotten apple core, a handful of mud, spoiled. Vegetables might be thrown in your direction. You try to flinch away, but your confinement makes even this small movement difficult, leaving you vulnerable to every missile. The stench of some of the thrown objects, combined with your own unwashed state, is nauseating. You feel less than human, reduced to an object of public derision. Your dignity stripped away layer by painful layer. A burning shame consumes you, so profound you wish the earth would swallow you up. There is no one to speak for, you be no friendly face in the crowd, only the relentless tide of communal condemnation. You close, your eyes are trying to retreat into yourself, but there is no escaping the sounds, the smells, the aching reality of your public humiliation. The endless hours crawl by at each one, a fresh wave of suffering, each moment, a stark reminder of your utter powerlessness. Hours pass, each one an eternity of suffering and shame. Finally, you are released, bruised, filthy, and broken in spirit. But for some offenses, the punishment is far more direct, far more brutal. The period of public humiliation in the stocks, or the pillory, eventually ends. But your ordeal is far from over. For other transgressions, or perhaps for any of those deemed to require a sharper, more immediate lesson, a different kind of punishment awaits. One that promises not just shame, but acute physical agony. The sentence is a whipping or a beating with rods, and you are now led, stumbling and weak, towards the place where this will be carried out. It might be the same public square, to ensure the spectacle is witnessed by as many as possible. A stark warning to all, or perhaps a slightly more secluded spot, though still open to the gaze of those tasked with administering and observing the punishment. You see a sturdy wooden post set into the ground, or perhaps a large, heavy barrel. Your heart plummets. There is no mistaking their purpose. Your already frayed nerves scream in protest. A silent, internal shriek of pure terror. Rough hands untie your bonds, only to resecure. You might perhaps stripping your upper body bare to the biting air, leaving your back exposed and vulnerable. You are tied firmly to the post, your arms stretched, your body pulled taut, or you are forced to bend over the barrel. Your position awkward and utterly defenseless. The dread mounts with every passing second. You can hear the murmurs of the onlookers, a low, expectant hum. You might hear the distinct, ominous sound of the instrument of your punishment being selected, the swish of a heavy leather whip through the air as it is tested, or the dull thud of birch rods being bundled together. Each sound is a fresh spike of fear. You clench your jaw, squeeze your eyes shut, bracing yourself for the inevitable, every muscle in your body tensing in anticipation. A cold sweat breaks out on your skin, despite the chill in the air. You can feel your heart hammering against your ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. Then it comes, the first blow, a searing, blinding pain that rips across your back so intense it steals your breath away. It feels as if your skin is being torn, as if fire itself has licked across you. An involuntary cry might be torn from your throat, a raw, animal sound of agony. Before you can even process that first shock, the next blow falls, then another, and another, a relentless, brutal rhythm of torment. The world dissolves into a red haze. Of pain, sounds become distorted. The thwack of the lash, the grunts of the person wielding it, the murmur of the crowd, all seem to warp and echo strangely in your ears. Your vision might blur, black spots dancing before your eyes. You try to remain stoic, to endure, but your body betrays you, trembling uncontrollably. Each impact sends fresh waves of agony coursing through, you radiating from your tortured back to every extremity. You might bite your lip until it bleeds, trying to stifle your cries, but whimpers, gasps, perhaps even sobs, escape you. You are acutely aware of the watching crowd, their presence a silent but oppressive weight, adding a layer of profound humiliation to your physical suffering. This is not just about inflicting pain, it is about making an example, about demonstrating the brutal consequences of defying the established order. Your ragged breathing, the sound of the impacts, the occasional chilling cheer or jeer from an onlooker, these are the only realities in your shrinking, pain-filled universe. Your only coherent thought becomes a desperate, silent prayer for it to end, for the agony to stop, for oblivion. When it is finally over, you are left a trembling, broken wreck, barely able to stand. The pain is a living fire in your body. But even this may not be the end of your suffering in this brutal world. The raw, throbbing agony of the whipping might still be a torment consuming your senses, or perhaps your sentence for persistent theft, or an offense, deemed even more egregious by the unyielding standards of this age, is of a different, more permanent nature. You are not released, but instead, your captors begin to make preparations that fill you with a new and profound kind of cold dread. There is a terrible finality to their movements, a grim purpose that speaks of consequences. Beyond temporary pain, your utter horror begins to dawn as you understand what is about to happen. Words like mutilation or branding might have been uttered in your sentence, words whose full and brutal meaning only now starts to crystallize in your terrified mind. You see the instruments being brought forth, and any lingering hope for mercy, any desperate belief that this might all be some terrible mistake, evaporates. These are not tools of healing, nor implements of simple restraint. You might see a heavy, cleaver-like axe, its edge glinting dully in the available light, or a long, sharp knife, its purpose chillingly obvious. Or, perhaps, it is a branding iron, its metal end already being heated in a nearby brazier, glowing, a menacing, angry red. The very sight of these crude implements sends a fresh wave of nausea and terror through you. Your stomach churns, and you might feel a faintness, a desperate wish for the world to simply go black. The anticipation is a slow, agonizing torture. You might be forced onto a rough wooden block, your offending hand or ear exposed, or held immobile as the glowing brand approaches your skin. The sounds are muted, your hearing perhaps distorted by fear, the low murmur of the official giving instructions, the crackle of the fire heating, the iron, your own ragged, unshallow breathing. You try to pull away, to resist, but strong hands hold you fast. your struggles futile against their unyielding grip. There is a horrible intimacy to this, a terrifying personal violation about to occur. Then the brief, terrible moment of the act itself. If it is mutilation, there is a sickening thud, a blinding flash of unimaginable pain that rips through you, so intense, so overwhelming, that you might scream or lose consciousness for a blessed instant. The immediate aftermath is a confusion of blood, a searing agony that eclipses all thought, all sensation beyond the raw, visceral horror of what has just been done to you. If it is branding, the searing agony, as the hot iron makes contact with your flesh, is instantaneous and all-consuming. The acrid smell of your own burning skin fills your nostrils, a scent you know will haunt your nightmares for whatever remains of your life. The pain is a live thing coiling and writhing within you. You are left trembling, bleeding, in a state of profound shock. Through a haze of pain and dazed disbelief, you begin to comprehend the full extent of what has happened. You might look down at your maimed limb or feel the throbbing, searing burn of the brand. This is not a wound that will heal and be forgotten. You are now permanently marked and visibly branded as a criminal, an outcast, in a society where reputation and physical wholeness are paramount. This mark will dictate the course of your future. Doors will be closed to you. People will recoil from you. You will be met with suspicion and fear wherever you go. It is a social death, a constant, visible reminder of your shame, your transgression. The stark contrast to any modern understanding of medical care or humane punishment is a chasm too wide to comprehend in this moment of raw trauma. You are irrevocably changed. Your body a testament to the brutal justice of this age. The world swims before your eyes. The pain is a raging inferno, but even worse is the cold certainty that your life, as you knew it or hoped for it, is over. You are now visibly and permanently a criminal, but there is one fate even more final. The pain from your previous punishment, be it the raw ache of a whipping, the throbbing agony of a mutilation, or the burning shame of the maw, stalks, it becomes a dull, a distant counterpoint to the new, all-consuming terror that now grips you. For your crime, perhaps deemed a murder in a moment of panicked self-defense, an act of treason, you never intended or even repeated grand larceny in a world where property was fiercely protected, or perhaps you were simply caught after being declared an outlaw. Your very existence a forfeit. The sentence pronounced is the ultimate one, death. And in this era, that almost invariably means death by hanging. Your final journey begins. You are led from the place of judgment or from your squalid confinement on a slow, grim procession. This path does not wind through the bustling heart of the town, but typically towards its outskirts, to a place often set apart, a place of ill omen. The crowd that follows or lines the route is different now. Some might still jeer, their appetite for spectacle unsated, but many are silent, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity, solemnity, or perhaps even a flicker, fear, as if witnessing your fate reminds them of their own mortality, their own vulnerability in this harsh world. Ahead, you see it, the gaunt silhouette of the gallows, stark against the gray sky. Simple as a brutal structure, often hastily erected, yet its purpose is unmistakable, radiating an aura of finality that chills you to the core. Your legs feel like lead. Each step, an immense effort, not just of physical exertion, but of will, forcing yourself towards this terrible end. A priest might walk beside you, his voice a low murmur as he offers the last rites, speaks of repentance of an afterlife. His words, meant to bring comfort, might wash over you, unheard or unheeded, in the roaring chaos of your own fear and regret. Or perhaps you cling to them, a desperate, drowning soul grasping for any sliver of solace in these final, terrifying moments. Your mind is a whirlwind of thoughts and sensations. Images from your life, the one you knew before, the one so incomprehensibly distant now, might flash before your eyes. Regret, sharp and bitter for the act that brought you here, for choices made, for paths not taken. Fear, a primal, icy grip that constricts your chest, makes your breath catch in your throat. Or perhaps, strangely, a kind of numb calm descends, the exhausted surrender of a mind and body that can take no more. You might utter a desperate, silent prayer, a plea for a swift end, or for a mercy you know will not come. You reach the foot of the gallows. You feel the rough texture of the coarse rope as it is placed around your neck, a horrifying, intimate contact. You might be forced to climb a short ladder, your trembling body unsteady, every movement an agony of anticipation. For a moment or you stand there, suspended between earth and sky, the world a blur around you. You might see the faces in the crowd, a sea of pale ovals, or the vast, indifferent sky above. You take what you know will be. Your last breath, the air feeling impossibly precious, achingly sweet. Then the final terrifying drop, a sudden shocking void, and the world fades, and so your day ends. Whether in the stocks, bleeding from the lash and maimed, or at the end of a rope, the promise of the medieval world for an accused criminal has been brutally fulfilled. You wouldn't last a day, indeed. But what if there had been another path, a fleeting chance? You were too bewildered, too ignorant of this world's intricate rules to grasp in those first moments of panicked flight. What if, as the hue and cry rose behind, your desperate, unseeing eyes had fallen upon the solid, reassuring form of the village church, its stone walls promising something more than just physical shelter? Imagine, for a moment, that some instinct or a half-remembered tale had guided your steps, not towards the wild uncertainty of the woods, but towards that sacred space. You might have made a desperate lunge for its heavy oak door. Your pursuers close behind. With a final, agonizing effort, you could have pushed it open, stumbling across the threshold into the cool, hushed silence within. The air inside would smell different, of old stone, beeswax, lingering incense, a stark contrast to the earthy, often fetid smells of the world outside. Before you, the nave would stretch out, perhaps dimly lit by a few candles flickering before an image of a saint, or the distant glow from the altar, where a carved wooden cross would stand as a potent symbol of protection. For a precious moment, you might feel a wave of profound relief wash over you. Here, within these consecrated walls, the secular arm of the law was traditionally stayed. You have reached sanctuary, but this sanctuary is not an absolute pardon, not a true escape. It is a temporary reprieve, governed by ancient complex rules. Soon see someone sway, perhaps the village priest himself. His expression, a mixture of duty and perhaps a guarded pity, would explain your situation. You have typically 40 days. 40 days to remain within the confines of the church and its immediate precincts. During this time, you must confess your crime to the coroner as a royal official. And then you face a stark choice. You can choose to leave sanctuary and stand trial, the very trial you have so desperately sought to avoid, with all its attendant terrors and near certain outcomes for someone like you. Or you can choose abjuration of the realm. This means you confess your guilt and swear a solemn oath to leave England forever, never to return upon pain of death. You would be escorted, often barefoot and clad only in a simple shift, carrying a wooden cross to the nearest port, there to take the first available ship to foreign lands. For you, a stranger with no resources, no language skills for other realms, no way to earn a living. This escape into banishment is little more than a slower, more uncertain death sentence from starvation, from disease, from further violence in an equally unforgiving foreign land. The glimmer of hope that sanctuary offered dims then gutters out, replaced by the bleak understanding of its true, grim nature. Even this narrow path, born of faith and ancient law, offers little true solace for someone in your position. The medieval world has many ways to crush those who fall outside its rigid order. As the dust settles on your harrowing day, a day that has seen you accused, hunted, judged, and punished with brutal swiftness, a weary understanding begins to dawn through the haze of your pain and fear. You reflect on the whirlwind of events, trying to make sense of why everything happened as it did, why your descent into the nightmare of medieval justice was so terrifyingly rapid. One stark truth, a truth that stands in profound contrast to the ideals of justice you might carry from your own time, begins to emerge with painful clarity. There was no presumption of innocence for you. Here, from the very moment of your accusation, perhaps that desperate grab for food, that misunderstood altercation, or simply being in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong item in your possession, you felt the scales of justice heavily weighted against you. In your world, the burden of proof lies with the accuser. A person is considered innocent until proven guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt. But here, in this ancient realm, the accusation itself, especially when leveled against an outsider, a stranger like you, carried an immense and often insurmountable weight. Whispers quickly became accepted truth. Suspicion, once voiced, hardened almost instantly into condemnation. You recall those moments during your brief, terrifying trial, if such a summary proceeding could even be called that. Your attempts to explain, your pleas, your desperate assertions of misunderstanding or lack of malicious intent, they were met with dismissive gestures, with impatient scowls, with an unshakable assumption of your bad character. There was no impartial investigation as you might understand it, no careful sifting of evidence. The word of established members of the community, your accusers, was taken as near gospel. Their standing there, their known place within the tight-knit social fabric, lent their words an authority that yours, the words of an unknown, could never hope to match, and that, you realize, was a crucial part of your undoing. You had no local family to speak for your character, no powerful patron to intervene on your behalf, no network of friends or neighbors who could step forward as oath helpers, as compurgators, to swear to your good name and lend credence to your denial. In a world where social bonds, kinship, and reputation were paramount, you were a blank slate, and upon that slate, they painted the image of a criminal with terrifying ease. To be unknown was, in a very real sense, to be already halfway to guilty. The community, the very bedrock of medieval life, closed ranks against the perceived threat you represented, and its judgment was swift and unyielding. There was no one to champion your cause, no one to even suggest that perhaps there might be another side to the story. You were a stranger in a strange land, and that in itself was a dangerous state to be in when the finger of accusation was pointed your way. Without a name, a family, or a lord to speak for, your voice was just a whisper in a storm of condemnation. And this storm was fed by a deep societal need for order, an order you were seen to threaten. You remember the chilling efficiency of the hue and cry, that moment when the entire village seemed to erupt, transforming from a collection of individuals into a single determined hunting party. And then, later, the public nature of your punishment, whether it was the stocks, the lash, or another form of degradation, carried out before the eyes of all. These experiences burned into your memory. Highlight another crucial aspect of why your day was so brutally short: the immense, inescapable power of the medieval community. Society in this era was profoundly communal. In the small villages and tightly packed towns, people lived lives that were deeply intertwined. Everyone knew everyone else, their families, their histories, their reputations. This interconnectedness could be a powerful source of support in times of trouble, a safety net woven from shared experience and mutual obligation. Neighbors helped each other with the harvest, celebrated births, and mourned deaths together, stood by one another in sickness or hardship. But this same communal strength, you discovered, had a terrifying obverse. When someone was labeled a criminal, an outsider, a threat to the established order, that collective power could turn with devastating force, becoming an instrument of enforcement and punishment. You felt it in the way the alarm spread so quickly, in the way ordinary people, farmers, housewives, even children, unhesitatingly joined the pursuit. There was no need to wait for a formal police force. The community itself was the police. Its eyes and ears were everywhere. You recall the feeling of being surrounded, of having nowhere to hide, where a villager might not spot you, where a familiar face, to them, not to you, might not recognize you as the fugitive. There were no anonymous crowds to melt into, no sprawling, impersonal cityscapes to offer concealment. Every field, every pathway, every dwelling was known territory to them, and you were the alien presence, easily identified, easily tracked. The importance of reputation in such a world was absolute. A good name, built over years or even generations, was a precious commodity, a shield against misfortune. But you, a stranger, had no such shield. Your lack of known reputation, in their eyes, was almost an admission of guilt, or at best, a blank canvas onto which they could project their fears and suspicions. The village acted as one, a unified body, expelling a perceived infection. The walls of suspicion were invisible, but impenetrable. This informal system of policing, born of necessity and tight social bonds, was incredibly effective at maintaining order, at least for those who belonged. For you, the ultimate outsider, it was a terrifyingly efficient trap, a tightly woven net from which there was little chance of escape. Your isolation was not just a matter of being alone, it was a fundamental disqualification from the sympathy or protection that community membership might have afforded. In a world where your neighbors were your police, your judges, and your jury, to be friendless was to be defenseless. And the very beliefs that held their world together also condemned you, as you reflect on the brutal efficiency with which your fate was sealed. You begin to glimpse another layer of understanding, another reason for the swiftness of it all. It wasn't just about your lack of local standing or the terrifying power of communal justice. It was also rooted in a deep, pervasive fear that permeated medieval society, a fear of chaos, a fear of the unknown, a fear of anything that threatened the fragile peace of their daily lives. Life in this era, you must remember, was profoundly precarious. The shadow of hunger was a constant companion for many, with famine a recurring threat. If harvests failed or wars disrupted the land, disease, swift and often inexplicable, could sweep through a village, decimating families, leaving behind a legacy of grief and terror. Violence, too, was a more present danger than in your own time, from petty squabbles that could escalate with deadly speed, to the larger-scale conflicts between lords or the ever-present threat of bandits and outlaws in the wilder parts of the realm. Their world was, in many ways, a world on edge, a world where the margin between survival and disaster was perilously thin. Into this world of underlying anxieties, you arrived, a stranger, unexplained, unannounced, and then your alleged crime, whatever its true nature, acted as a spark in a tinderbox. It wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a disruption, a tear in the carefully woven fabric of their existence. Strangers, by their very nature, were unsettling. They came from outside the known, predictable rhythms of village life. They might carry disease or ill intentions, or simply represent a destabilizing element, an unknown quantity in a world that clung desperately to what was known and familiar. An unexplained event, a sudden act of violence or theft, could easily tap into these latent fears, amplifying the community's response far beyond what might seem proportionate from your modern perspective. The harshness of your treatment, the speed with which you were hunted down and condemned, was therefore partly a visceral reaction born of this fear. It was about restoring order, quickly and decisively. It was about making an example, sending a clear message that such disruptions would not be tolerated. It was about warding off perceived threats to the fragile stability they fought so hard to maintain. In their eyes, you were not just an individual who had committed a specific wrong, you became a symbol of that chaos, a manifestation of the unseen dangers that lurked just beyond the edges of their ordered world. Your presence, your actions, however misunderstood or unintended, threatened to unravel the delicate threads that held their community together. And so they reacted with a force designed not just to punish you, but to protect themselves, to reassert control in a world that often felt beyond their control. Your presence, unexplained and disruptive, was a tear in the fabric of their daily existence, a tear they felt compelled to mend with brutal efficiency. Even their faith offered little comfort to someone in your shoes. You recall the chilling prospect of trial by ordeal, that moment when you understood your fate might be decided not by human reason or discernible evidence, but by an appeal to the supernatural, by fire or water. Even if you were spared, that particular terror, the very air of your judgment, was thick with a religiosity that felt both alien and absolute. Oaths were sworn not just on personal honor, but on sacred relics, invoking the wrath of God upon perjurers. Pious pronouncements often accompanied your condemnation, framing your alleged crime not merely as an offense against an individual or the community, but as a sin against heaven itself. This, you begin to understand, was another profound reason for the unyielding nature of the justice you faced. In the medieval mind, there was no clean separation between the laws of man and the laws of God. Earthly justice and divine will were seen as deeply, either inextricably intertwined. A crime was not simply a transgression of a social contract, it was a disruption of God's ordained order, a stain upon the moral fabric of a Christian society. This imbued the entire legal process with a religious certainty, a conviction that the authorities in punishing offenders were not just maintaining civic peace, but were also acting, in a sense, as instruments of divine retribution. The hand of God was seen to be at work in the affairs of men, and it was believed that through various means, including the terrifying logic of the ordeal, God would reveal the truth, ensure that guilt was punished, and, occasionally, that innocence was protected. This unshakable faith in divine intervention in legal matters made appeals to purely secular reason, to logic, as you might understand it, largely futile. And how could your faltering human explanation stand against what was perceived as a divine sign, or against the solemn oaths sworn by established, God-fearing members of the community? Your judges, your accusers, likely believed with utter sincerity that they were upholding not just the king's peace, but God's peace. This gave their actions a moral weight, a certainty that would be difficult for you, with your likely more secular or at least differently framed modern mindset, to even comprehend, let alone counter. You were being judged by a system whose foundational beliefs were, in many ways, profoundly alien to you. The legal tools themselves, the oaths taken before God, the possibility of an ordeal, where the outcome was left to divine judgment, the very language of sin and retribution that permeated the proceedings, all stemmed from a worldview where the sacred and the secular were one. This understanding doesn't lessen the terror or the injustice you experienced, but it does cast a different light on the unshakable conviction of those who condemned you. They were operating within a framework of belief that was for them as real and as solid as the stone walls of their churches or the earth beneath their feet. When your judges believe they are carrying out God's will, your pleas of earthly innocence fall on deaf ears. The very tools of justice were designed for a world you didn't belong to. As you continue to sift through the wreckage of your day, another stark reality of this medieval world asserts itself, contributing to the brutal swiftness of the justice you encountered. You saw no familiar blue uniforms, heard no reassuring Miranda rights. That's because medieval's England, unlike the society you know, lacked a standing professional police force in the modern sense. There were no dedicated officers patrolling the streets, no detective bureaus to meticulously investigate crimes over weeks or months. Law enforcement, such as it was a far more localized and communal affair. You experienced this firsthand with the hue and cry, where every able-bodied man was, in essence, a temporary constable, obligated to join the pursuit. Reeves and bailiffs, officials appointed by the local lord or the crown, had duties related to keeping the peace and apprehending offenders, but they were not a full-time police service as you would recognize. Justice, therefore, had to be relatively swift, and its penalties needed to act as powerful, visible deterrents to others. Consider also the practicalities of long-term imprisonment. In an age with limited resources, where survival itself was a daily struggle for many, the idea of maintaining large numbers of prisoners in dedicated jails for extended periods was often economically impractical and logistically challenging, especially for common folk. The jail you experienced, that dark, squalid holding place, was typical. It was designed primarily to secure individuals awaiting trial or for very short sentences for minor offenses. It was not equipped, nor was there generally the societal will or resource for lengthy incarceration as a primary form of punishment for more serious crimes. Keeping a prisoner fed, clothed, and guarded for years on end was a significant burden that communities and lords were often unwilling or unable to bear. This practical reality directly influenced the nature of the punishments meted out. If long-term imprisonment wasn't a viable option for many offenses, then other methods had to be employed to deal with those who broke the law. This is why physical punishments were so common and so public. A whipping the stocks, a branding, or a mutilation. These were swift and visible. They served not only to punish the individual, but, perhaps more importantly, from the perspective of the authorities, to make a lasting, terrifying impression on the rest of the community. A clear lesson to others about the consequences of transgression. Exile, too, was a way of removing a problem individual without the ongoing cost of imprisonment. And for crimes deemed sufficiently grave, or for offenders considered beyond redemption or control, death was the ultimate and most permanent solution. The system, you begin to realize with a chilling clarity, wasn't designed to rehabilitate, to offer a path back into society for those who erred. It was designed primarily to punish or to remove. And so, your day was destined to be short and brutal. Every aspect of this ancient world, from its tight-knit communities to its profound faith and its practical limitations, conspired against you, the accidental criminal, the unwilling time traveler. You truly never stood a chance. And so, we arrive at the close of your medieval day. A day that began with such jarring disorientation and progressed through a relentless whirlwind of fear and pain. From that first, confusing awakening on rough, damp earth to the desperate, hazy recollection of an act that set your fate in motion. You felt the chilling terror of the hue and cry, the entire community mobilized against you, a stranger in their midst. You endured the agonizing uncertainty of flight through an unforgiving landscape, only to be inevitably caught, a helpless pawn in a game whose rules you never truly understood. You were subjected to a justice system, utterly alien to your modern sensibilities, accused without true presumption of innocence, interrogated without counsel or compassion, your words twisted, your pleas unheard. You may have faced the terrifying prospect of oaths you could not fulfill or ordeals that promised agony, regardless of guilt. And then, the swift, absolute judgment of a local lord, his word final, his power unquestioned. Finally, the pronouncement of a sentence designed not to rehabilitate, but to punish, to make an example, to remove. Whether your imagined end came through the slow degradation of the stocks, the searing agony of the lash or brand, the irrevocable loss of mutilation, or symbolically, at the foot of the gallows, under the shadow of death. Your journey through this single terrible day illustrates with stark clarity why you, a product of a different time, a different understanding of law and humanity, wouldn't last. There was no mercy for you, no true understanding of your plight, no avenue for a fair defense as you would know it. The speed of it, all the lack of recourse, the overwhelming forces arrayed against you, the weight of communal suspicion, the fear of chaos, the unshakable belief in a justice intertwined with divine will, and the practical necessities of a society without modern policing or penal systems, all conspired to make your day a short and brutal one. You were a forgotten soul in a harsh age, an anomaly to be swiftly and decisively dealt with. The system was designed to be this way, unforgiving, swift, and a powerful deterrent for an outsider, an accidental criminal, and unwilling time traveler thrust into its gears. Survival was an almost insurmountable challenge. This, then, is the grim answer to that initial question. Your story, though imagined, echoes the countless real stories of those who faced the terrifying reality of justice in medieval England. And as we leave your side in the fading light of that distant, brutal day, let us carry with us a deeper understanding and perhaps a profound sense of gratitude for the world we inhabit now. And so our journey through that single harrowing day in medieval England comes to a close. You walked in the worn shoes of someone caught in the unforgiving gears of ancient law, felt the chill of fear, the sting of injustice, the crushing weight of a world so different from our own. We have traveled together through moments of profound uncertainty, faced the terror of the unknown, and perhaps glimpsed the stark realities that shaped life and justice in those distant, often brutal times. It was an intense experience, even in imagination. To step so fully into such a desperate plight, to feel even a shadow of that vulnerability. The path was fraught with peril at every turn, a constant struggle against forces far beyond your control. But now, it's time to let those echoes of the past gently fade. Take a slow, deep breath and feel yourself firmly back in your own time, in your own safe space. Allow the awareness of your present surroundings to return gently. Notice the support beneath you, the familiar textures, the ambient sounds of your own peaceful environment. Feel the softness of your bed or the comfortable embrace of your chair. Become aware of the quiet of your room, a stillness so different from the chaotic sounds of pursuit or the oppressive silence of a medieval jail. The hue and cry is silent now. The stern-faced judges and harsh laws of that distant era have no power here in this moment, in this place. Those shadows cannot reach you. Here, you are secure. Here, you are at peace. Let the distance of centuries settle, like a comforting blanket, separating you from the anxieties of that imagined past. You are home, and all is well. So just let the story of that medieval day drift away now, like a leaf on a gentle stream, carried softly out of sight, out of mind. Release any lingering tension you might feel, any echoes of fear or sadness that the journey evoked. Let them dissolve like mist in the morning sun. Your mind is calm now, wonderfully calm and quiet. Your body is heavy, pleasantly heavy, with oncoming sleep and sinking deeper and deeper into the comforting support beneath you. There is nothing more you need to do, nothing more you need to consider, nothing at all to hold on to, but to allow yourself to drift effortlessly, peacefully into deep restorative rest. Just let go and allow the gentle currents of sleep to embrace you. Sleep well and know that you are safe.